All right, so welcome back into the live stream today. We're going to be jumping into Solana, a full breakdown. We'll also compare that to an investment stock, one you might know, and that is Tesla. But breaking down that with me is going to be a special guest. You guys have been waiting for it for a long time to have him on the show for sure. Welcome in. My name is Paul Barron, and you are in TechPath. Let's jump into it today with, of course, James from InvestAnswers. A big fan of your show, James. So first of all, I'm in awe. Thanks for coming on our show. We appreciate it.
No, we've been trying to set this up for a long time. Thank you for having me. And you've got to come over to this side of the fence too, real soon. So I appreciate your great work as well and your professional production and all the pots you have a fingers in. So that well done to that too.
Yeah, we're trying to keep ahead of it for sure. Hey, James. Okay, so I've been watching InvestAnswers for a long time. There's a few YouTubers that I really track very closely. You and Cowan, Rob over at Digital Asset News, and a few others, that I really respect. And I look at the breakdowns that you guys give a lot of times. You are known for your models, your investment models, which I'm in awe of in the sense of understanding how to take a project apart from a tokenomics side of things, look at the overall potential of a project and how it might fly up. Now, Solana is been one of your big stars for quite some time. And I want you to give me a breakdown on it because I'm kind of on the fence with Solana. I've been in and out. I've lost money. I've made money on Solana. But at the same time, I'm a tech guy. I have come from a tech background. And I always look at projects like Solana and I always scratch my head. So I want to first jump into Solana. And the first thing I want to get into is why you think Solana is kind of the star that could really kind of take us in terms of blockchain futures and how people might use it for adoption.
Well, that's an interesting story. And one of the problems out of the gate with Solana is it went up too high, too fast. And that called a lot of people out with the FOMO disease. But basically, it all started, I used to be a Bitcoin maxi, and then in circa March, April 2020, I bought my first altcoin. That was Ethereum. It was a relatively big position at a good price. I was looking at it for a long time through, 2017, 2018, but didn't jump in until early 2020 when the fire sale was happening through C19. But then when I always look at my positions, I always look for the killer in the space. So for example, if I own Amazon, what is the Amazon killer? If I own Google, is there a Google killer? Tesla, is there a Tesla killer? So when I started looking at all the layer ones, I had to identify very quickly in early 2021 what the ETH killer was. And there was a lot of talk of many, many ETH killers. So I started building out models to profile them because I do everything from a quant perspective. There's no emotion, there's no cult or anything else. It's just all numbers, and that's what I've done all my life. And the first thing, I ran the top 300 cryptos through what I call the compendium, which looks like regulatory risk, centralization, pocket lining, like how much are insiders paying themselves, crypto inflation, which is a very important factor, not only for equities, which some people call dilution, but also for fiat money and also for crypto and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I think out of our top 300 cryptos, Solana popped up as number 9. So I was like, whoa. And, that's compared to everything. And it was after names like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Monero, a couple of other names I can't quite remember. Nano, I think, was in there too. So really long established names. And all of a sudden, this token looked really well structured. Then after that, we built out a product called the SCP Profiler, again, early 2021, that appraises layer ones. It looks at, speed, security, scale, users, developers, TVL, growth, breadth of dApps, integration capability, and so on and so forth. And basically, it ranked joint first with Solana. But the problem is it had a fraction of the market cap. So I always look at comparable values, and I discovered, whoa, this is a screaming deal. So that was early 2021. I started making videos about it then. So that's the background story behind Solana.
All right, so finding the killer in the space, yes, that's always kind of I think in many cases, if you look at how technology innovates, in many cases, it's that secondary person or company that's always pushing the other, without a Bill Gates, you didn't have a Steve Jobs. Without, all of the innovation that happened in Silicon Valley, you didn't have a lot of the innovation that was occurring within these tech companies. So I would agree to a certain extent that, especially in the blockchain space, there's always a little bit of, competitiveness, but at the same time, they're all seeming to try to solve the same solution. I know that Charles and his love for Solana is so great. When I say Charles, I'm thinking Hoskinson, pun there.
Yeah.
But when you look at projects like Cardano, or you look at something like a Near protocol, and in comparison with a Solana, where would you say the strengths of Solana truly are, outside maybe their developer strength and maybe the adoption side of it, for at least from a project partnership side? Is there anything from a core architecture side of things from Solana's camp that you really think outpace
Well,
some of these other guys?
it's funny because this almost sounds scripted. The fact that you're talking about people like Steve Jobs, etc., is critical. So one of the first things I look at, one of the most important things I look at, is the leadership team. Who are they? What is their background? Can you trust
Yep.
them, etc.? So looking at so if when I look at blockchain, I look at the analog being enterprise software.
Mm-hmm.
Very simplistic. Like if you look at, say, the importance of scalability, security, cost, usability, integration, flexibility, etc., etc. It's very, very like enterprise software. And the analog closest to enterprise software for me in blockchain is network management and telco. And that is what attracted me to Anatoly and Raj.
Yeah.
Anatoly, in particular, he understands mobile, he understands network management, he understands the importance of scale, the importance of speed, security, all that type of stuff. And that was kind of the linchpin, because I have a lot of friends that work at places like Cisco, and some of the top engineers on earth back in the 90s and early 2000s all work there. And it was fascinating to see that background. And then early 2021, I think it was, I think Sam Bankman-Fried, I love him or I hate
Yeah.
him, he identified Solana as well, or even in 2020, if I recall correctly. And the validation from Sam and FTX is akin to winning the Nobel Prize in crypto. So that was another big rubber stamp for me. So all the stuff kind of collided together at the same time. In
Yeah.
terms of how all these other players, everybody's, is, as you say, is trying to do the same thing, but it's all about how they are structured, how they attract developers, how easy it is to develop, how good the UI is, how good the adoption is. Again, the other analogy I always use, it's very crude, and you'll hear a lot of analogies today, but is I see blockchains as shopping malls. And
Yeah.
one of the key things that we look at is users and adoption, and the ease of which to set up a shop inside that mall, and how much foot traffic do you get, and how much they spend, and how long do they stay, all that stuff. That's the easiest way to think about a blockchain. Nobody talks about them like that, and maybe I'm simplifying it too much, but that is where Solana crushes it.
Yeah. Well, when you look at some of the wins that they've had here recently, but also over time, some of the partnership wins that they've had continue to kind of really push the narrative of that Solana could be the one that becomes the true Ethereum killer, if there is going to be one. And I often will argue that, at some point, all of these chains will meet their match. And it's a matter of timing. It's a matter of who is going to dominate at the time in which we have critical mass adoption occurring, whether that's through partnerships or real-time critical mass adoption in some sort of utility case that drives the token, parabolic. And there's a lot that could be on that forefront. When you look at this story here, this is Solana's trying to bring basically the masses in terms of users based on their whole idea behind the Solana phone. Now, when you get into mobile devices and the potential, I'm a big proponent of that, because I felt like, when you looked at the birth of the iPhone in 2007, the birth of social, all of that was really a derivative of how mobile growth was occurring. I still believe that crypto gaming and what we'll see in crypto is probably going to be birthed, especially in critical mass adoption, through some sort of mobile element. What are your thoughts on how Solana's integration into these new age elements are, and do you think this is the path they should be taking?
Well, that was the other piece, was the bold vision. And again, it goes back to the leaders, and in their very early days, in I think 2018, they wanted to build a path for crypto to 1 billion users. And the only way to do that is through mobile. But before we
Right.
jump in there, there was just released a statistic, I think, from Kraken that states that now Solana is the most active chain from an active user perspective.
Hmm.
Bitcoin is number 2 at about 925,000 monthly active users. Uh, Solana has, I think, 965,000, and Ethereum has 440,000. So the growth of this chain is way beyond my wildest dreams at this
Yeah.
stage of the game. But you're dead right. The SMS, the Solana mobile stack, is definitely the easiest path to 1 million users. Again, going back to Anatoly, he understands mobile, he understands network management and all that stuff. And I think it's a very ambitious goal, but he is under no he's not delusional in any way. He doesn't have a lot
Yeah.
of hardware costs because he got another group building it for him. He only has 5 software developers building the mobile. And the beauty of today is it's so much easier to build technology, whether it's mobile operating system or a blockchain, than ever before. So it doesn't take a lot to build something very revolutionary, which is also technically a threat to Solana down the
Yeah,
line too.
exactly. Yeah, that's something that, I've been in software development for 2.5 decades, kind of cut my teeth with Microsoft. And what I've seen just over the years, and even in building our own tech products, is that even over the last decade, the acceleration of developers, the amount of developers are available, the speed in which they can get tech stacks up and running much faster now. And to your point, is that a lot of these chains, and back to what I was talking about earlier, is that at some point there's always going to be a real competitor. Question is timing, and all those kind of things play into it. I want to jump into a quick story here on Solana-based Steppen. Now, Steppen, whether you love them, hate them, you like move to earn, play to earn, all that aspect of it, Steppen has been one of the Solana-based projects that has been kind of on the forefront. They're making tons of money here within it. Do you think that we'll see, with that kind of model in what Steppen has done within the Solana blockchain, do you think we're going to see a lot more of these companies coming into the fray here in terms of really innovation on Solana?
Yeah, I think that was that whole move to earn. It had a very noble idea behind it, and we analyzed it here internally. But one of the things I didn't like, again, it wasn't properly structured, because it really, as far as I'm concerned, it's kind of gouged the users too much.
Mm,
Offered very expensive sneakers for crazy incentives, but at the end of the day, you get whacked over the head. So I think hopefully groups that will learn from the step-in structure, which is the first kind of its kind, and it was
right.
revolutionary and really well built. It just, they lined their pockets too much, which I don't like. That doesn't sit well
Yeah.
with me.
Well,
But I
yeah,
think there will
that
be many more of them coming.
okay, so yeah, that's my point is will we see, maybe, because as you know, those first movers are usually the ones that get a chance to kind of, unfortunately, take advantage of the markets in most cases. If you look at almost any tech innovation in any category, that first mover advantage is real. But in most cases, it also paves the way for the real next candidate to make its way in. If you look at the Solana blockchain and you think, all right, let's say utility case, what is the best potential opportunity here for Solana in terms of driving a utility use case into modern day society? Think of it almost an everyday use case application. Where would you see Solana actually working to get that done?
That's a interesting question. First of all, people think, blockchains are all kind of NFTs or DeFi or move to earn or whatever the fancy shiny new thing is in the room at the moment. I think the end game for both the Solana team and for people like Sam Bankman-Fried is the ability to have blockchain where they can run things like stock exchanges on. Very
Mhm.
high TPS. We're talking millions of transactions per
Right.
second, instantaneous settlement. That's the end game. It is the modernization of TradFi on a blockchain. That's
Yeah.
what that's the big cherry for this whole space, in my opinion.
Do you feel that we could see that? So with that, because that to me is a very lofty potential for what these blockchains could be doing in the next 5 years, if they are capable of, most of them, especially in terms of TPS on transactions per second, um, definitely have that on their bullseye. Do you look at traditional finance converting, or do you think we'll see the birth of a whole new layer of financial instruments and products out there from companies like FTX or others, whether it's Binance, if you like what CZ is doing? Do you think that's where the birth of the innovation is going to come from, or do you think it might come from traditional finance trying to find their way into blockchain?
No, I think everything will move towards the blockchain over time. Some things will move slower than others. Things like voting records, medical records, stock exchanges, you know, cellular
Yeah,
communications, you name it. Everything will move to the blockchain because it's better, cheaper, faster.
yeah,
It
for
has
sure.
to for efficiency's sake. So there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that, if you ask me.
All right. So when you think about that, all right, this is the scenario that I often challenge myself on with Solana, and that is the just the number of outages that they've had. And obviously, this article kind of breaks it down on, they had their 7 outages here. We've seen it over time. It gets back into the basis of how beta products work. What I mean by that is products that haven't been fully, completely, vetted out through for whatever reason, whether it's congestion or we're dealing with some sort of block issue in terms of a failure on the actual mainnet. Do you see that eventually resolving itself in the near future, or do you feel like there's just so much happening within Solana and there's so many developers that it just may take a lot longer for us to really get to, that 99.999% uptime?
Well, technically, and I've looked into this a lot, there have been 3 outages since beginning of 2021 in the purest sense. I think the first one was 18 hours, then a 7-hour one, then a 4-hour one. So they're getting better at resetting things, which is simply not acceptable for a blockchain. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, another analogy I'll throw at you is people still buy, you know, Range Rovers and Jaguars and cars that break down all the time. They don't buy Dodge Neons, even them, or Toyota Camry, which may be a lot more reliable. So one of the things I have checked very carefully on was investor sentiment towards these 3 outages, and the rest are
Hmm.
kind of congestion, which makes them a victim of their own success because it's so widely adopted. But also looking at the development team and listening to all they say, these are very easy fixes and they're
Yeah.
chipping away at this problem. That's why they're not coming out of beta. So I'm not that concerned about that. In addition, I analyze very carefully daily active users across all the top 20 layer ones. And it was so funny. During the outages, it didn't stop any adoption whatsoever. It kept on going up. So, if somebody wants to trade an NFT or move some money around a wallet or whatever, yeah, they'll wait 4 hours or 7 hours. But where else are they going to go?
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Well, in
that's just
most
the
cases, yeah.
reality.
If
Yeah.
they're kind of trapped in that ecosystem, it
Yeah.
is an issue that you face with that. Solana is and has been one of the top teams out there in terms of total developers. I was just looking at kind of their competitor array here with Polkadot, Cardano, Ethereum. Near Protocol, which is one that I really like, of where Near could hold its own, not necessarily versus Solana, but what they're trying to do overall. Of those that you would look at, and I won't put in Avalanche. Avalanche, though, I feel like they're just not, maybe not in the same hemisphere just yet. But if you look at Cardano, Near Protocol, we'll call those two out. When you look at those compared to Solana, is there any killer? If there is a Solana killer out there, is there one that you're watching right now? Because I'm sure you're kind of hedging your bet with it to a certain extent. You always want to be on the lookout for it. Anything you're watching?
Yes. So we are looking at one that is yet to emerge. We're also looking carefully at Near and Cardano. And I remember I had a wager with somebody back in November 2021, and that's when Charles promised 1 million TPS. And I said, I'll bet you 10 Bitcoin if they get to 1 million TPS by November 2022, we could do that. So if the chains do get to that magical 1 million TPS number like Cardano, my narrative will change instantaneously. I always talk
Yeah.
about tap dancing shoes and moving to the next option or alternative if that
Hmm.
happens. But right now, Near is great. It just doesn't quite have the adoption it needs. It has many
Yeah.
factors and facets that make it very attractive. It would be up there from, you know, well, your background is software, so you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
around things like usability and the ability to integrate and having a moat and breadth of applications which show the flexibility of the chain. These are things where Near actually does very well as well, very secure too. And other chains, just it's all a function of, as you say, the number of developers, the ease of development, having a lot
Hmm.
of out of the box capabilities so you can spin up a dApp real fast, and having dApps that do a whole bunch of different things, with that integrated framework. That's what's really, really important about a stack. You
Yeah.
know, I refer
Yeah.
to kind of a blockchain more as like a software stack, which you're probably very
Yeah.
familiar with as
For
well.
sure.
Yeah.
Make sure, guys, to hit like on this video. We want to make sure to get your feedback on if you like these kind of interviews like we're doing with Invest Answers here today. And also, don't forget to put some questions in over on the side chat. We'll try to get to those as we can. To your point, James, I want to go to this slide right here, which is showing the most developed cryptos. This is March of this year, and Solana is right there at the top. 400. This is based on number of developers in the GitHub community. 409, obviously Polkadot coming right in behind it. If you kind of compared, I don't know if that's, I'm not sure about this because it's both 370 for Polkadot and Kusama. Do you know if that's the same 370 or if that's
I think it
a
could
full?
be. And that's the problem
That's
with the
kind of what I
GitHub
think.
data. The GitHub data sometimes is not really reliable. It doesn't show the true development that's happening behind the scenes. Not everything is done on GitHub, especially secret projects like
Right, right.
SMS. I guarantee you those key 5 developers that are working on that, they're not publishing all their stuff on GitHub. Not
Let's
yet,
talk
anyway.
about secret projects with Solana and kind of the hidden gems that haven't necessarily made it out there just yet. With your analysis right now, what are the superhuman strengths of Solana that are yet exposed?
Well, I don't know, and I tend not to. My investment philosophy is very simple: high conviction and very few names. So if you look at crypto, I only have 3 things. It's about 82% Bitcoin, it's about 14% Ethereum, and the balance is Solana. And
Hmm.
my vision is to try get my Solana bag the same size as my Ethereum bag, but we'll see what we can do during this crypto winter. Back to your question, I don't invest in ecosystem plays at all. I just prefer the layer ones. I kind of like the San Francisco gold rush. I invest in the people that make the shovels and the pick hammers, not the extraneous stuff, because just far too much risk for me out there. There are a couple of things that are coming up that are interesting, but my big focus for Solana is to keep track of their development roadmap, moving out of beta. Maybe it'll happen sometime later this year. We're not sure. Keeping tabs on the SMS platform, which is super exciting. That would be a massive game changer, as well as key assets within the ecosystem, like Steppen, just from a user perspective, what they're doing in Magic Eden, which I
Yep.
think Magic Eden volume eclipsed that of Ethereum OpenSea in June, which is the first time that ever happened. So it's really
Mm.
come out of nowhere. And again, that goes to the fact that people go to the chain where it's easiest, quickest, and cheapest to operate. And
Yeah.
that'll be the same with any technology ever. Better, cheaper, faster. Normally you
What are
have
your
to pick 2, but in this case you can pick 3.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what are your thoughts on this? You've got, and I'll go back to Near Protocol. This is one that I compare or give some comparison to what's happening with Solana. Both of them are development platforms, same development platforms in Rust. If you look at Near Protocol developers, very young. Actually, it's about the same age as Solana. But if you look at them in terms of their developers, not necessarily a big group. We don't see a lot of new development there. Do you think at any point in time, because there is similarities in terms of the development architecture, meaning the software that these guys build on, do you think there could be some defection at some point where we could see fatigue in Solana and we see developers moving over to the next best protocol, maybe that being Near?
No, because developers they're very clever. They're kind of like the canary in the mine. When you see a developer investing their time in a project, that's like an investor
Yeah,
investing in a project, but they do it
yeah, for
first.
sure.
So you're definitely on the right track by following the developer. As I say, follow the developers, follow the money. It works in that same thing. But again, Near is good, but it's not perfect. It does
Yeah,
have some problems. Our uh, layer one SCP profiling score is not perfect. Their compendium score is not perfect. It's been around a longer time, etc. It's not really widely adopted. The question is, what would it take for people to move? And this goes
Hmm.
back to, a similar thing. If there is a chain that has everything you want, but it's slightly inconvenient to move, and the other one is the same value add, which is not, it's less, there's no
Right.
point in going. So that's where the network effect comes in. And I think perhaps due to the fact that Solana had their development time during the crypto winter of 2018 was a real
Hmm.
boon to them. I think
Yep.
Near has been around even longer than that, and there was a couple of restarts. But again, I don't focus too much on Near. I know enough to know if it's going to be a danger, but that's as far as it goes.
All right, so the case of Solana is still solid for James. I'm still on the fence. I like it. I'm one of those that is optimistically skeptical. Anytime then until I see it really kind of run out of beta, and also really get to a critical mass in some sort of use case. But to your point, James, I think if
Yeah,
mobile becomes one of them, and when I
yeah.
say beyond just TPS and transactions, I'm talking about use
It
case
already has
utility.
it does more transactions than all other chains combined, and it has more
But let's
daily
get
active
away from
users than all
transactions.
other
Let's
chains.
get away from transactions and some sort of
Okay.
utility. What would that be?
Again, more see one of the key factors that people overlook sometimes is the ability to spin a DApp up. So
Okay.
if you go back to say April 2021, there was nothing on Solana. It was
Yeah.
literally a ghost
Oh,
chain.
the numbers are massive now.
So like we're talking 14 months later,
Hmm.
the speed of development and change is absolutely staggering. Like
Yeah.
if you asked me last year where I saw them in 2025, I'd say maybe where they are now. That is the
Oof.
difference, and that's what we need to look at: speed of adoption, breadth of dApps, flexibility of the chain, and daily active users. And keep a close
Yeah.
eye on the SMS platform.
Yeah. I
There's
think
one other
mobile
thing as well
is the one
that
for
gets
me.
people. Yeah, there's one other thing that gets people hung up too is the level of decentralization, or they say, "Oh, it's a VC coin, etc."
A
And
lot of people look at
you,
that. Yeah.
you know Silicon Valley. So first of all, regarding the level of decentralization, the key metric by which you can develop that, and I worked with CTO Larson on this as well. My theory
Hmm.
was always the number of validators, and his theory is once it eclipses 1,000 unique validators, it's decentralized sufficiently.
Right.
And I think of all chains, Solana is now the fourth most decentralized chain after Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, maybe it's number six, number five, or number six. I have to track them. And then the second thing, really, regarding VCs, any chain that has been built or set up since 2017 is all VC backed. So
Sure.
whether you look at
Well,
Avalanche
yeah,
or Phantom,
and
these,
exactly. But I think when you look at the origins of Solana's VC backing, you go all the way back to Multicoin Capital, David Sachs, some of the real power players in
yeah,
Silicon Valley who have made up a lot of that. And I would agree there is some caution there, but at the same time, because you could follow A16Z, many of the guys out there in a lot of projects that you could still question that. There's many that have kind of that same similarity for sure. So I don't necessarily think that would be a big argument for anybody to kind of point on that. But
it,
yeah.
in fact, you triggered another thought in my head as well for the audience to recognize too. There is a lot of risk in crypto right now, and the 3AC implosion, they do own Solana, and
Hmm.
they may source that liquidity to repay some of their creditors. So
Right.
there could be a dip in price. A lot of people are talking about Solana going to $10, whatever. It never fell below 22, 23, I think, during this winter. It's now
Hmm.
at 37. So, but watch for that. There is a lot of risk. Have your seatbelt on, as I warn people all the time.
Yeah, and as you guys know, we do these market movers like this. Even when we bring on guests like James, the main thing here is this is not investment advice. The main thing we're trying to do here is drill out some research that you guys can start your own engines with and get out there in the market and kind of make your own way, which is, everybody's portfolio is going to be different. So you have to kind of treat them with those kind of skill sets. So cool stuff. Let's get into Tesla. All right. And I want to talk about Tesla in the sense of what Elon is doing. First of all, in the breaking news, I think we have to address it first, is you had Andre Karpathy, who has exited the company just here this week. This is the head of essentially their advanced driving systems. And we're talking about, I think, one of the most important executives in the history of Tesla outside of Elon himself. With that being the case, now many people might look at this as, okay, this could be a knock on full self-driving. What are your thoughts on what the future of full self-driving holds, especially with losing someone like Andre?
Yeah. So first of all, in full disclosure, like Solana, I own Tesla. I always disclose my holdings and my allocations. Last year, I was about 70% Tesla in my equity portfolio. Now I'm about 83% Tesla because, in fact, if you rewind the clock, as I mentioned, Tesla's up 12% over the last 365 days, and Solana's up 25% over the last 365 days. So those two names have been holding up very, very well, which is a good thing. I wish I had had more Solana back in the day. But in terms of Carpathy, yes, that is a little bit concerning. I always say when there's smoke, there's fire. Him leaving, there's no way he'd be leaving if, and I'll speak raw and blunt here as I always do, if they were on the cusp of nailing FSD.
Yeah,
And I bought a Tesla X about nearly 4 years ago, and that's what made me become a really big Tesla investor. And the story behind it's really strange. Is somebody left a car running in a garage with the garage door closed, and I walked into that garage, and the smell of the fumes literally could have killed anybody, a small child, a dog, a human. It was terrible. After that, I said, no more petrol cars for
mm,
me. Done. So that's the story behind me buying a Tesla, which made me buy Leap options on Tesla, which ended up being a very good thing at the time. But in terms of Carpathy, I think, I have FSD. I see how it learns. I see how it moves. I think they are close. I think it could be something that will definitely work on certain roads as kind of a robo taxi by the year 2023, 2024. Not overly bullish on that. But remember, he was just one person and he was like the public face, but there were hundreds of people behind him. And the visionary, I also believe, behind FSD and all that AI stuff is actually Elon Musk. And of
yeah,
course, the armies of people behind him. It is a little bit of a red flag, but people do leave. He did go on sabbatical, I think, 4 or 5 months ago. And we knew people just burn out. You and I
yeah,
have burnt out multiple times in our lives. It's a
yeah.
lot what these folks
Well, and I
do.
think, and you're working for, basically one of the smartest guys on the planet. So the
Yeah.
challenge alone, just to be able to keep at that pace, is pretty tough. And I've talked to me, I've met Elon personally before in Silicon Valley, before Tesla, before Tesla was acquired with him and Sequoia and all that group. But when you look at kind of his drive and how he really presses innovation, whether you look at his history at, in their involvement in PayPal, obviously his involvement in building Tesla as a car company, this is definitely one of those. The thing that concerns me right now with FSD has been this whole take rate. And if you look at the take rate, this is a chart right here on the FSD take rate right now. This is North America, of course. But the one that I always look at is the big seller, which is that Model Y. And over time, and I have a Model Y, I have another Model Y on order, that's another story. We've been waiting on those forever. But the declining take rate on the monthly subscription, which I thought would do so much better in terms of full self-driving. But if it is, most people, I'm sure, is taking it in the same way I am. And I'm a big Tesla fan. I love the cars. But I have found that the full self-driving was just not that fully vetted out yet. Still a lot of problems, doesn't have true city street level, navigation, all those kind of components. How close do you think we are really? I mean, now with Carpathy leaving, do you think this is maybe a year or two or even 2 years out before we see full self-driving at scale?
Yeah, I think it'll be 2023 at the earliest. There was a lot of talk, I think, from Kathy Wood and her firm that they'd have it and they'd nail robotaxis in 2022. But that when you actually have it and you drive with it and you see
Hmm.
some of the blind spots that
Exactly.
the
Yeah.
FSD actually has, it can be very concerning. But however, I do a lot of long distance driving, like 250-mile trips, and I would not get into a car with that FSD for the type of late night driving that I do for safety reasons. If you're driving in torrential rain or snow or heavy traffic, high speed trucks, this vehicle saves your lives. And
Yeah.
again, it is mind blowing what it can do. So I think the other important factor regarding the take rate that you showed there is
Hmm.
when you look at the old price of FSD, forget the subscription. I don't even know what the subscription costs right now.
$200 a month.
But okay, but if you look at the cost of it being now 12K for the all upfront cost
Right.
versus a 40, 50K car, that's a big chunk of change. And a lot of people stretch themselves to buy that particular vehicle. And
Yeah.
I think that, you know, it's interesting. I think as it does come, get more sophisticated, more advanced, you'll see that change, especially with more positive stories. I think it was also impacted by a lot of consumer reports and a lot of FUD spread by media.
Mhm.
Oh, this person crashed into a tree. Oh, but they were also drunken in the back seat. So, it's a terrible thing to happen. But when you dig into the actual cases that are widely published, it puts people off. But they'll get
Yeah.
above that. And I think the other big factor for earnings, we'll see this in Q2 numbers, they had to turn on some margin. And they did that by offering FSD at a discount. So we'll see exactly what impact that does. Remember, everything they sell is pure profit, zero
Well,
cost.
no doubt. I mean, these guys are killing it. I mean, they've had multiple price increases in the last year and a half now. This is kind of an interesting story. I ordered a Model Y, was one of the first seven-seaters that I ordered last fall. What was it? August, September. And I still have yet to get the car. And right now it's still slated for an October delivery. So it will be over a year waiting to get a seven-seater. But what's interesting is that they've been trying to upgrade me out of that car into a five-seater for more than what I ordered the car that is a seven-seater for in October. And I'm like, I'm never going to see this car. They're never going to let me have it.
Well,
So
I think that's what they're going to do with the Cybertruck too, because I've got Cybertruck orders in from the very beginning, and I think it was a dual motor or a tri motor. Now they're going to come out with the quad motor first,
yeah, try
which will
to
cost a
upgrade you into
fortune.
the quad. That's how we ended
Exactly.
up getting, exactly. We ordered another Y because my wife needed a car. We were trying to get one. She finally got tired of waiting on it. And she's a gas driver. I've been trying to convert for years. And she went back to BMW because she was like, I'm just fatigued. I'm exhausted. I can't wait anymore. They keep moving this thing around. And that was
Yeah.
after we ordered a performance Y to try to move it up. So anyway, those are personal woes, first world problems here. Let's talk about Tesla and Twitter. All right, you've got Elon coming out here trying to buy Twitter, then he backs away. Is he trolling Twitter here? I don't understand what's going on, and why would he be doing these kind of things instead of just putting his head down and building rockets and awesome automobiles?
First of all, he plays chess 5 moves ahead of everybody else. So you have to really understand how he operates. Second of all, he does really very much believe in honesty, truth, freedom of speech, and everything
Okay.
else. And that's very, very important to him. So I do honestly believe he wanted the platform, but he
So you think it
also
was a
had
real
it.
push? He was really going for it,
Absolutely.
and then
Yeah, yeah,
and
definitely.
once that he couldn't prove the bot situation, which was really the sticking point, you think that was the true issue? Do you think he was trying to out Twitter on that scenario? Because this obviously affects their pricing for advertising as well as faith in the platform. What are your thoughts on that?
So first of all, the platform lacks any innovation. It's like they built it 20 years ago and didn't touch it.
Hmm.
And you've seen many software companies that do that. They
Yep.
don't invest in R&D or continual enhancement. Why rock the boat? It's making money. Just let it sit there. Um, I've seen this happen all too often. I think he knew about the bot issue. Like he didn't go in there with his eyes closed in any way.
For
He
sure.
knew it's probably 20% bots, and he tried to get it. They rejected his first offer, put in a second offer, subject to them proving the bots are less than 5%. Like, and I look at my own personal Twitter account, I get one follower add me every 60 to 90 seconds,
Hmm.
and I'm no longer that active on Twitter. But when I look at the people that actually follow me, they all have one followers and very peculiar names. They're all
Yes.
bots,
Yeah.
guaranteed, all bots. So if you look at my Twitter following, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 25% to 50% bots. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
something that Twitter, I mean, somebody needs to just smack them in the face and say, fix this, guys. This is
Clean
silly.
house.
This is really silly.
Yeah. Hey, well,
Yeah.
listen, YouTube has a lot of these problems as well. We fight the bot problem and the spammers like crazy here on channel. Just as a reminder to you guys, if you're in the comments right now, don't reply to anybody that's trying to spam you. We will not ask you for anything in those comments. The most you'll get is a like from us and maybe a occasional comment, but never asking you for anything. James, back to this. April 25th, Elon announces he's going to buy Twitter. Tesla stock has since then performed at a negative 28.5%. Is this causing, I guess in general, just a disarray from Tesla's standpoint based on Elon's non-focus of really being, honed in on the company?
Not at all. This is global supply chain, global macro worries, stock market tanking, C-19 shutdowns in Shanghai.
Other things.
That's all of that.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with Twitter. Maybe 1% of that move down is Twitter related.
So Shanghai, they shut down. I think what I don't know, maybe the timeline of was 4 or 6 weeks, but they shut down Shanghai. That was a big, it was a big deal for Shanghai because obviously China being one of, if not the best market for Tesla in general. And you look at supply chain still affecting some car makers, but some car makers starting to pull out, even though they're limiting, some of their production capacity, like what kind of options you can get, things of that nature. How much longer do you think we'll see supply shock hitting, especially Tesla, before we'll see free flow of Model Ys and S's really making deliveries on an ongoing basis? How long before we see that?
Well, there's a million ways I can answer this question. First of all, taking a step back, how Tesla actually manufacture cars, like if you watch that guy Monroe fellow, like
Sandy Monroe.
he's been doing this. Yeah, he's been doing this his entire life. His mind just gets blown every single time he rips down a car.
Yeah.
Between the stamping of the actual vehicle, like one of those little toy cars we had as children,
Casting,
to the structural battery, welding, coating, you name it. I mean, they're now pumping. What they did actually in Shanghai, they took the downtime. I think don't quote me on this, but they revamped their process line, and now they can push out, I think, one Model Y or one Model 3 every 38 seconds out of Shanghai. And when they get Austin ramped up, it'll be even faster because that's built even more for scale. So as each gigafactory comes online, they might be doing a car in 30 seconds within a year or so. And that's just mind-blowing. So in terms of where we are, when they're going to get back to full speed, Berlin and Austin are ramping up. Fremont is getting faster and faster. They're thinking about other locations. But the question is, how many cars will they make this year? The question is, will Shanghai shut down again? Will they just say, okay, C-19 is here to stay. Let's just live with it like the rest of the world who is half intelligent. I know they're very afraid of it because, well, we won't go down that path. But we'll see what happens. I think they will be very challenged, but people like investors can look past that challenge. And I think the weakness in Shanghai will be offset by the growth in Berlin and Austin and even Fremont.
Well, you're getting to the point of their manufacturing prowess, their ability to single cast, especially in the Model Y. That's a huge thing because you're right. Sandy Monroe, who is a big teardown artist, he's also at the same time, you kind of have to take it as a grain of salt because he's trying to get business from the car makers to help them make electric cars and also better their manufacturing processes. So, but I do agree with, especially Model Y, and especially in Austin, the potential for that is real. I heard and saw somewhere, I think it was on Twitter, that Tesla employees were driving Model Y's 4680 batteries that had 500-mile capacity in a Model Y. Now, I'm driving a Model Y right now that my battery is deterred at 90% down under 300 miles. So that would be unthinkable, a 500-mile capacity in a Model Y and a 4680. That would be huge. In my opinion, if that were to happen, Tesla stocks goes to the moon, for sure.
Yeah, I think there are other factors. I don't think people care as much about range as maybe you do, but
I do. I want range.
Things like nailing FSD. But when do you ever get into a car and drive 500 miles without stopping for a coffee or a bathroom break?
Well, we're here in Florida. We go up to Orlando all the time, and I have to do the little dance with finding the right charger. And it's a thing. We get to watch a couple of Netflix movies every time I do it with one of my team here. They kind of give me a hard time in our Tesla, and that's a long range. I mean, we're on a car that can actually make it to Orlando, but you do have to get that process. Back to the final question. We'll take a few questions here to get ramped up on it. And that is for you, James. Tesla or Solana, which would be the better investment right now if you were holding these for, say, a next year to 2 years?
Oh, year to year. So it's price predictions are kind of shaky, but what I do, you mentioned models at the beginning. What I try and do is build many models that approach prices from many different angles, like value per user, like battery production capacity, like percentage of ETH market cap, all those different types of things. So I have data going out year to year, but it's with this bear market, it's very, very difficult to predict. I did do a price prediction model that had my bear case for Solana was like 260 by the year 2023. We shot through that in 2021, which is very bizarre. But that was like, I think it was 250 and it went to 258 during November. So it was a very unusual situation. But what I can do is I have modeled out the battery production, the scale, the margins, the relative market cap across different PE ratios for Tesla, and also multiple pricing prediction models for Solana, again, going out to 2030. But people always have to realize, Tesla has a key man risk. If anything happens to Elon, heaven forbid,
for sure.
bets are off. Solana, somebody could spin up a new blockchain that could be better, cheaper, faster tomorrow. That could blow Solana out of the water. So all of this is extremely speculative. What is interesting, though, is during the last 3 years, the Sharpe ratio I look at for Tesla was about 2.14, and that for Solana is about 1.87. So per the Sharpe ratio, Tesla's the better investment.
Yeah.
But in terms of out to 2030, so my bear case for Tesla is $3,551. My expected case is about $7,100, which is more than a 10 bagger from here. And for those who don't know, a 10 bagger is invest $100, get 10 back, you have $1,000. And then my bull case is about $9,700, which is a 14 bagger. Now, when you talk about Solana, I have multiple price predictions model based on number of users, number of adoption, breadth of dApps. I look at the tokenomics, the inflation, all that type of stuff. And my bear case by 2030 is about 937 for Solana, which is a 26 bagger.
That's a different, different play.
My bear case for Tesla is a 5 bagger. Solana is a 26 bagger. So, but remember, there's so much more risk. You're out so much further on the risk curve. That's why it's very, very important. If anybody takes any lesson away from this today, is asset preservation first, alpha second. And this is what people definitely learned in 2022. So my expected case for Solana is about $1,560 by 2030. And that may seem ridiculous, but if they continue on this trajectory, and I put these price prediction models, most of them together in April, May, June 2021. And that was before all of the adoption and everything else.
Yeah, so, before a lot of these packages.
And the bull case is about exactly.
Come on
the bull case is about 3,100. Just look at that Steppen example. 125 minute a quarter from one little application, one of 1,000 applications.
Crazy.
Mind-blowing.
Crazy, for sure. So, hey, we got a poll here, and then we're going to get to a few questions. Can you stick around for some questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, let's get to the poll real quick. And all right, which is the better investment? Solana's, I think the crowd is with you on this one, James. They like it, 58% on Solana. So I'm kind of in the same boat. If I was going to long-term it, it would most likely be a Solana. But I still
remember,
am a Tesla
everybody,
lover.
Yeah, but remember,
there is a risk. There is a risk.
Yeah, never put all your eggs in one basket, and you're going way, way further at the risk curve.
Yeah,
and also my price prediction models for Tesla only take into account manufacturing of EVs, not FSD, not insurance, not their energy business, not their AI, not their robots, none of that.
Well, and I still think Tesla has yet to truly tap into things like what Canoo tapped in. They did this deal with Walmart. They have their van deal with Amazon. There's a lot of other utility vehicle aspects within the worldwide, especially from an EV standpoint, that Tesla hasn't even touched yet. Right now they just, their heads down with Model 3 and Model Y building. and eventually they're going to get the truck out, which I hope one day we'll actually get a chance to have one of those. But I hope it's not, him trolling me. Let's get into some questions. The head of Tesla, too unpredictable. All right, Jay, I would agree with Andre Karpathy leaving. That's a big deal with that for sure. Manny's telling us that range anxiety is definitely real. Jim is asking, and he kind of is on your point. Why put all your eggs in one basket? 80% one person is responsible for the success of the company. Back to your point, for sure, James. I like that. Musk and Twitter. There's a hypothesis out there that no interest in the purchase, but rather he wanted to sell his Tesla shares. Needed an excuse. Did he sell or jettison a lot of Tesla shares to prep for that? Okay.
He stole 10% of his shares, and this is also interesting when you look at. I think it was Shamath Palapataya said last weekend, when the two smartest capital allocators on Earth dump stuff that they said they would never sell. That's Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. That is a sign, ladies and gentlemen. Follow the leaders. If they're dumping, it's at a top. So, but yeah, that is one idea, but he doesn't care about money. He has more money than he ever needs. He's in this for fun.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it's the challenge. I think his true mission is, try to get to Mars. Question, how much longer do you believe this crypto winter will last, James? What are your thoughts?
Unfortunately, we are under the cloud of the Fed. The minute the Fed pivots, and I've got many, many theories on that. Check out my channel. I've got my own theory. I've put together detailed money supply, GDP models, interest rate hike models, etc. They can't go beyond 3.5%, or else they completely destroy the economy and fire us fast into financial Armageddon. They will pivot. I just don't know when. And that pivot means slow down the level of the rates, like from 75 basis points to 50 or 25, or slow down the QT process. Pivoting has many, many different forms. But either way, it's QE to infinity. Money has to continue printing. And the debt ratio is too high for them to keep jacking rates. They can do it only on a very short-term basis, but not for 12 months longer. Impossible.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree with you. What are your thoughts on it? Because this is something I've been talking about for the past few weeks, is that most likely we were going to see a higher CPI. It did come in. And from there, I'm anticipating we'll actually see a full point on the FOMC meeting at the end of the month. If we get a full point going into interest rate hikes here, James, do you think that would be the top of the interest rate pressure that we're getting from the Fed?
Absolutely. So
I believe there it's down.
So first of all, we're beyond peak inflation. Look at any metric, with the exception of owner's equivalent rent, we are beyond peak inflation. Look at the price of oil coming down, et cetera, commodities, wheat, grain, you name it. And we were comparing June 2022 to June 2021. Again, different ballpark, but now it should be a little bit better. Second of all, in terms of, I lost my train of thought on that. In terms of them, what was the question again? Pivoting back?
So, with a full 1 point, if we get a full 1 point at the FOMC, would we see a downtrend from there?
Exactly. So what they're trying to do is literally shoehorn demand destruction in as quickly as they can, so they can reverse course as quickly as they can, to get that reverse course in play by September 2022 or October at the latest, so they can bring the stock market back, bring the economy back for the midterms. Exactly. It's a political
You and
game.
I are in the same, you're in the same boat. Yeah. We're thinking the same way now. Okay.
It has to be, or else you might as well just fire every single Democrat.
Exactly, because it's going to be over. It's going to be over.
Yeah.
Let's get another one. Google had outages in its early days. Obviously, there was some ins and outs on Twitter, all that kind of thing. So everybody's kind of saying, "Hey, don't worry about Solana. They're going to be just fine with these little bumps in the road." But you got Anthony coming in saying Solana is too centralized. You kind of explained this earlier. Give him a little bit more faith of why it's not as centralized.
Yeah, let me pull up the actual validators. on Google Sheets. Just to put things in perspective for the audience here, I can pull up the true data. If you look at the top chains right now, let me check my eyes. Okay, so again, ask anybody who knows blockchain technology. One of the key aspects of centralization versus decentralization. Remember, you can turn ETH off too, and remember, I think 60% of ETH runs on AWS. So you could argue they are completely centralized as well. But Ethereum has 284,000 validators. Bitcoin technically has about 16,000. Elrond has 3,200. Cardano has 2,949. And in number fifth place is Solana with about 1,800 validators. So that is the level of decentralization. Now, if you go down the line, you got Near Protocol, 59 validators, Flow, 83, Phantom, 87, Polygon, 109. That doesn't cut it. You've got to get the number of validators to 1,000 tipping level. Once it goes beyond that, then you can consider it decentralized. That's the math behind it. Ask any blockchain technologist, they'll tell you the same thing.
Your thoughts, last question here is, I assume that each believes Sol is not a security, but do you think that is the case? We're going to see some pressure from a regulatory landscape. Do you think Solana will fall into a securities basket?
Okay, so first of all, Bitcoin is not a security. Many argue it's a commodity. Ethereum has an extremely good chance of not being classed as a security. Every other of the 18 or 19,000 tokens that are out there are all securities. No ifs, ands, or buts. It doesn't mean they're dead. It means they get a slap on the wrist, reorganize some stuff, and move forward. That's just the nature of the beast. But saying that Solana's not a security, no, it is. They all are. Everything is.
How do you think the exchanges will respond to this when we do see the pressure from the Fed? We get some regulatory guidance. Do you think the exchanges are just going to have to flip and say, all right, these are the kind of scenarios you guys are being faced with in terms of trading? Or do you think we're going to see more of the traditional securities and exchange houses, traditional investment and commodity brokers going into full-on, sales of crypto assets?
Yeah, well, you take me down a path, but we'll hopefully one day, Paul, you and I can tell our grandchildren, when we were alive, stock markets used to only be up, like 15% of the time, open 15% of the time. The rest of the time, they're either on vacation or open between 9:30 and 4, whatever it is. And the fact that crypto trades 24/7 is phenomenal. I think everything is going to collide together in the future. There'll be no such thing as a brokerage or an exchange that only does one or the other. Everything will become and
one place.
Everything will adapt. And this will also be confluent with the time where I believe exchanges will start to run off blockchains in the year 2025 or beyond, or very close to that. So all of that is kind of the way I see the future. The question is, which blockchain is going to run it, or which blockchains?
Are going to be right there in the mix for sure. Well, hey, listen, that's why you watch our shows. Make sure and tune in to James over at InvestAnswers. You guys will get a real treat on following James. James, great to have you on our show. We got to get you back on here. This was really fun today. Always love picking people's minds that know what they're talking about.
You got to come over to our side too. You got 2,000 people live watching. So I hope everybody learned something. And if you learned something new today, smash Paul's like.
There you go, my man.
Awesome guy, awesome channel. Thank you, everybody. And thanks for having me, Paul.
We'll catch you soon. All right, you guys are tuned in over here on the podcast side of things. Make sure, of course, and tune in over here on our YouTube channel. This is where you're going to catch all these great interviews, a lot of our breakdowns and analysis. It's also where you can, of course, subscribe and get in on the live stream. So that means you get the early alpha before everybody else. You get a chance to understand what's happening in the markets faster and faster than anyone else. All you have to do is just hit the like button, hit that subscribe button. You're going to get it all right there. If you guys want to reach me, it's out on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechBath.